Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is Johnny Got His Gun, written and directed by Dalton Trumbo from his own novel. This is from 1971, and yes, this is another imprint release. Now, this is a film that I have seen parts of probably about 500 times. But I've never actually seen the film before, because extracts from the film were used in Metallica's video for their 1988 single One, which was inspired by the book, and their music video, which is one of the greatest music videos of all time, intercuts scenes and dialogue from the film into the 7.5 minute music video. One of the greatest songs of all time, one of the greatest music videos of all time. But that's, well, it came out in 1988, so that's 34 years ago, and I've probably seen the music video at least 500 times. So I have seen parts of this film 500 times at least, including that still from the Doctors that appears in the music video. So this is a film that I've always kind of wanted to see, and the fact that Imprint have actually released it on Blu-ray, it was kind of a no-brainer. There's the alternate artwork. Yep, if you're looking for one of those war films that's exciting and has lots of explosions and lots of heroes in it, this is not the film. Dalton Trumbo wrote the novel in 1938. It was published in 1939, and it's about a soldier called Joe Bonham, not called Johnny, who goes to volunteer for World War One, and basically gets hit by an explosive shell, and the doctors end up having to take off his arms and his legs. He can't see or hear, he can only feel vibrations, he can't speak. His life is essentially a living hell, but they're keeping him alive to study him, to see if it can help anybody else. It is a wonderfully bleak film. You can maybe see why Dalton Trumbo never directed another film. Obviously he was a bit old at that point. Trumbo was one of the Hollywood 10 who, in the McCarthy hearings of anti-communism, refused to name names, so he was blacklisted. He's a screenwriter for countless films. Kirk Douglas brought him back for uncredited work on Spartacus, and then a little while later told everybody it was Dalton Trumbo that worked on it. So in 1971 he got to write and direct his own novel. Didn't realise it was actually remade in 2006. I haven't seen that, but by looks of the stills it's almost shot like a stage play. So the film itself is shot in black and white for the reality scenes, but because we spend a lot of time in Joe's head, his fantasies, nightmares, and memories and recollections are in colour. The film stars Timothy Bottoms as Joe Bonham, who was only 18 when he made the film. Jason Robards plays his dad, even though his first appearance in the film is on his deathbed, but he appears in the dreams and memories and nightmares of Joe. Also stars Kathy Field as his girlfriend who doesn't want him to go to the war, and her father lets them have one night in bed together before he goes off to the war. It stars Donald Sutherland as Jesus. Yep, heard that right. Donald Sutherland plays Jesus. And David Soul has a very early performance as a character called Swede. And he has a very dodgy Swedish accent, which sounds a bit Dutch. So we pick up the action as he's being brought into hospital, and the doctors are discussing his condition, which isn't great. But they decide to keep him alive, and then we just get his remembrances, the relationship with his father. It goes back to him as a boy and his father talking about democracy, and for democracy, every man would give his only begotten son. And democracy is about young men killing each other. To which the young Joe asks, well, why don't old men do it instead of young men? And it's a hard film to watch. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different if you've grown up with that Metallica video, because there's points in the film where you know what's coming and they hit kind of harder because you've seen those moments so many times before. There's a wonderful nightmarish sequence where Joe is imagining himself in a carnival sideshow and a freak show, and his mum and dad are the carnival barkers. Jason Robards carnying it up with he is the armless, legless wonder of the 20th century, which is a really wonderful scene. There's a couple of amazing scenes with Donald Sutherland as Jesus. He's got a scene where he has a group of soldiers, including Timothy Bottoms, and these soldiers all know when they're going to die and how they're going to die. If you're a fan of Richard Lester's How I Won the War, you are expecting one of them to say, "I die in North Africa." And they're all questioning why Timothy Bottoms is there, because he isn't going to die. David Soul's character, the Swede, says, "Oh, I wish I had whiskey," and Donald Sutherland produces whiskey, and David Soul asks him, "How did you do that?" And Donald Sutherland says, "I used to do it at weddings." There's another scene where Joe is talking to Jesus and asking, for help and how to distinguish between his nightmare world and reality, waking and dreaming, when, there's a sequence with a rat which is in colour, not black and white, and which gives a hint it's maybe not in reality. And of course Jesus is like, well, you could always swipe the rat away if it's reality. And he's like, well, I can't because I don't have any arms, because at this point the doctors have removed his arms and legs. And Jesus is working in a carpentry shop at the time when they're having this conversation, and of course he's making little white crosses, but he's making white wooden crosses. Also, if you've seen Richard Attenborough's wonderful "Oh, What a Lovely War," that final shot of just a hillside covered in white crosses, why is that not on Blu-ray? That one deserves to be on Blu-ray. I'm not a huge fan of Richard Attenborough, but "Oh, What a Lovely War" is absolutely fantastic. But that's a sidebar. So Donald Sutherland as Jesus is making these white crosses, which is a lovely little touch as well. The film is 111 minutes. It probably is 10 minutes too long. It does kind of sag a little bit. There's a couple of scenes that could easily be cut out. There's a scene with Timothy Bottoms, a memory of him with a prostitute, which easily could have went. There's a scene with him in this kind of wilderness with his girlfriend, which again could probably have been cut. So for me, it's about 10 minutes too long, but it is full of wonderful moments. He can't communicate, but he remembers a memory with his father talking about Morse code, so he starts communicating with the nurses and about Morse code. There is one nurse who obviously feels sorry for him and tries to end his life and is interrupted. It is so bleak. it's quite tough again for anybody, but viewers in 1971. This is not going to be like the Battle of the Bulge or something like that. This is bleak stuff, but it's really shot well. I mean, it's low budget. It's an independent little film, but the scenes in the trenches are well done. Even though again, there's not a big budget going on. Robards, who was a veteran himself of World War II, and he fought in the Pacific, gives a wonderful turn, as you'd expect from Jason Robards, because he always does. Some scenes perhaps have a little bit of unintentional humour in them, especially the scene where he's getting his stitches removed from the top of his arms, and the scene where they're doing the same with his legs. But the nervous laughter kind of goes away after a little while, and it is just like really disturbing, because again, if you put yourself in his position, no arms, no legs, no way to communicate, you're just alone with your thoughts. It's pretty dark. The edition from Imprint it's a 1080 presentation that looks fantastic. It's got an audio commentary by cinema author and critic Matthew Asprey Gear from 2021. There's a documentary about Dalton Trumbo, Rebel in Hollywood, which is excellent. There's an interview with actor Timothy Bottoms. He does mention Barack Obama at one point, so it's an archival one. It's behind the scenes footage with commentary by Timothy Bottoms and director of photography Jules Brenner. And there's the 1940 radio adaptation starring James Cagney, which is an interesting listen. And it also has the theatrical trailer. So it's a wonderful release of a film that I think definitely needs better exposure. The inner image, there's Jesus with the soldiers with Donald Sutherland, and down here is David Soul as Swede. There's Timothy Bottoms. It's a wonderfully odd scene, as are all the scenes with Donald Sutherland as Jesus. But the one where he's making crosses is wonderfully done. A film from 1971. It's now 51 years old, but it's well worth a look. And it was an interesting experience, like I say, for me, who had seen the Metallica music video hundreds and hundreds of times since 1988, to actually see the film in its entirety. It's a really powerful piece of work. It's maybe a little bit too long, but I mean, that's a minor gripe. It's a film that really needs to be seen by more people. So thanks very much for joining me for this random review of Johnny Got His Gun. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying cheerio.